And welcome to our brand new segment, Q&A with Denny. Sort of like a fireside chat, but all about mental health. Actually, it's all about what you want to ask. So I've compiled a series of questions from both our Instagram and our email. And I figured that by now I have enough that I should really be starting to answer these because I figure my insight could help somebody. Or if you have insight, send us that too at sechelppodcast@gmail.com or slide into our Instagram DMs with your helpful tips or things that have helped you. This is sort of a larger effort to try to reach out to those that are struggling and provide some helpful insight, because we're not alone in this, right? So if you have positive things to share or have questions about mental health or military transition, let's share it. Let's gather together in this awesome online public forum. I'll read your questions or your insight and we'll share them. And I'll put this together as a weekly or bi-weekly segment to be titled later. Maybe just questions with Denny, or Denny answers questions. We'll go with that for its first episode. So hold on tight as we start our segment. Question number 1 comes from Instagram. I'm retiring in 12 months. What do I do? What do I do? Panic emoji, exclamation mark. Well, my advice is to start setting your medical appointments. Now, this individual, from their profile, I would gather they're from the SOF community. And I will tell you this: if you're like me, you didn't have a medical record. You didn't go to sick call. You didn't go to any of those appointments and really share anything with your provider. But you got 12 months. So start building your list, your chain of events, all the things that you went through, all the jumps where you were knocked out unconscious, or maybe just a little concussed. Also, detailed all the times that you may have had your bell rung, whether in shoot house or during training, all those things. By now, you probably had a few surgeries. By now, you probably had a few doctor's appointments or maybe a trip to the ER too. Write all that down. And here's the kicker. Document your downrange stuff, everything that happened during your deployment. If you were seen by a provider, write that stuff down. No incident is too small. Write everything down. There are guys right now that are dealing with, stomach issues from parasites they got downrange. That's a common one. That's actually something that you'll hear a lot when you go to your VA appointments. And the important thing is the VA is going to do their own, QTC appointments. They're going to schedule you out once you get closer to your retirement date. That's a whole different set of appointments. What you want to do now is ensure that all the stuff that you went through and while you were in the military gets documented. That's what you're doing now in those 12 months. And if you need higher level care, meaning that you are suspecting that you have TBI, or maybe you do, man, you've just been putting it off, you haven't been talking about it, or you read operator syndrome and you figure out that you meet all the blocks for it, start asking for care. Start self-advocating, going to your doctor, sitting down with your nurse practitioner and asking to go places like PrEP or STAR. That way you can get treated by a multi-domain team that can document all the things that are wrong. You deserve it. You've served your nation for 20 years. Get the help you deserve before you get out, because the help and the resources are available right now. When you get out, you're dealing with the VA. And that system is not easy to deal with. So that's the number one thing. Helpful tip. I received this information from an old team sergeant, a guy that was wise and smart enough, and I'm grateful he passed it off to me. Build an Excel spreadsheet of all your deployments, of all your combat trips, and all the medical issues that you experience in all those locations. And that makes it easier to go down. It's chronological. Build it that way and save it. So that's the first thing. Document everything. Make sure you have a document for all the different things that you experience in your career. It, you know, people laugh and they joke when you save all your documents, but I'm telling you, it'll help you when it comes to making your claim, especially if you had a hospitalization somewhere abroad. That's something I wasn't thinking about until I was, retiring. And somebody said, like, hey, every time you visit a specialty doctor, especially for TBI, that's a hospital stay. Have those records. That will help you on the backside because you can make a claim for that. Fun fact, I didn't know about SGLI claims or VSGLI claims for staying at hospital treatment centers for TBI for longer than I believe 30 days. You can claim that. So please have all your documentation. The next thing that I will say about that, if you have 12 months, that's still a good amount of time. Ideally, we want a little bit longer, but you got 12 months and you need to be leaning into understanding your purpose, your passion, and what's your next mission going to be. You got soft individuals, military individuals. We're mission driven and we were giving a purpose and we had a passion behind our service. When you transition out, you don't have that. No one's going to be building that for you. And in fact, I'll even throw in that you have to develop and understand what your new values are going to be. And no one can do that for you. Only you can develop that for yourself. And at first it can seem scary, but there's ways to do it. There are books or resources. There are nonprofit organizations that can help you with that. I never get tired of advocating and sharing the Honor Foundation because it helped me tremendously. And they can help you with that purpose and that passion and that mission. You're still going to have to develop and answer those questions, but they'll help you with tools and resources to figure that out. And along that line, I want to share with you, again, two things that helped me. Simon Sinek wrote these great books, Start With Why, and also Find Your Why. Now, again, this is your job. This is your job. Your wife can't do it for you. Your friends can't do it for you. An organization can't do all the work for you. I would highly suggest you guys buy that book and start digging into it and figure out what you're going to do. Otherwise, you're going to do what a lot of us do. We get out, we jump at the first available job, and then after 6 to 7 months, 8 months, or even a year, we end up leaving it because it wasn't for us. We weren't. It didn't suit our needs. It wasn't something that was tied to a passion or a mission. We weren't really thriving there to begin with, and we just stuck with it because of money. Don't do that. Start your journey on the right foot, heading towards what you're really driven for. So please get those two books. It will really save you a lot of time and heartache. Number 2, I think I have PTSD, but I'm scared to get diagnosed. I don't want to lose my job or the ability to own firearms. Now look, let's kill this myth right now. Diagnosed, live with PTSD. I still was able to get a job as part of a mental health care team. I was still able to get hired and have the opportunity to work in an awesome career. And at no point in my professional endeavors or in my, in life in general, has this diagnosis or this documentation hindered me in any way. I own firearms. I love shooting. I have bought firearms after being diagnosed, and it has never hindered my ability to do anything that I'm passionate about. A diagnosis is it's helpful because then you have a name for what you're dealing with. You might not have PTSD. You might sit down in front of a provider and realize that, okay, you're dealing with X, Y, and Z, and it's not this. But once you have the diagnosis, then you know how you can fight the enemy. A lot of people think that being diagnosed with something means you have to make it your identity. You don't. Especially when it comes to something like anxiety, depression, PTSD. You can overcome these things. You can fight, you can overcome it, you can learn tools, and you can move on with your life. But you'll never get there until you ask for help, until you kill that myth for yourself. Because everybody around you and people, and you might hear from your loved ones, and they'll all tell you the same thing. It's not going to hinder your life, but you're not going to believe it until you finally take that step, ask for help, and kill that myth on your own. If you need help, it's a simple, and if you're in the military, we'll do this exercise together. We're going to pretend we're walking into mental health support. And, if you're a soft guy, a Green Beret, you're going to your P3 clinic and you're saying, hi, my name's so-and-so, and I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z. I need help. It's that simple. It's literally that simple. It might be a little different where you're at and your different basis, but at the end of the day, it's really that simple. Asking for help or calling or texting 988 or calling Military One Source, asking for referral to a mental health provider. The first steps are always the hardest. But once you start engaging with a provider, you simply have to be vulnerable enough to divulge what you're going with, or what you're going through. It's as simple as talking. Just state the truth. You think you're struggling with PTSD. Here's all the things that I'm struggling with. I'm not sleeping. I'm having nightmares. I am really angry. I avoid certain places. I always feel like I'm on guard. If that's what you're living with, and then you get it out and you talk to a provider, and then you get that diagnosis, it's not the end of the world. The sun is still going to come up. You're still going to be the same person. You're just going to be equipped with tools and resources to fight and combat this thing, because you can overcome. Question number 3. I want to share my story. How do I get over the quiet professional mentality? Right? I get this a lot. Whether you're a Ranger, Green Beret, Special Operations in the Air Force, MARSOC Raider, we have this idea that we have to be very quiet about our service and very quiet about what we've done. And we have to hold our story in. And the reality is, once you're out, you get to decide. I can answer that for you. You get to decide what you share with the world. But I will say this, that nobody owns your story but you. If you don't share it, it's going to die with you. And that's a benefit to nobody. I think that we need more stories from our generation, from our GWAT vets. This idea of being a quiet professional is arguably what's killed so many of our friends. We don't want to talk about our struggles. We don't want to talk about what we're dealing with. We don't want to talk about what keeps us up late at night. Forget that. Shed that identity. Build a new identity. If you want to share your story through a book, through a screenplay, through a podcast, do it. It doesn't matter what anybody in that team room, it doesn't matter what anybody in that platoon has to say. At the end of the day, it's your life. And none of us are living it. Only you are. Do what you want to do. If you're passionate about it and you have something you want to share with the world, do it. We're all going to benefit from your strength and your vulnerability. When we see somebody from our community succeed, and they're doing it authentically and sharing their narrative and their life story, it's a beautiful fucking thing. Focus on that. Don't focus on the individuals that are grumpy and sad and still holding on to that quiet professional idea. And don't go around sharing state secrets. Don't go around sharing classified stuff, but live your life. Tell your story. Be excited about waking up and doing your project. And don't live for another moment being that quiet professional that just fades into the back. You only have one shot at life. Go write a book. Go do a movie. Live your life. Question number 4. How did you get over not being a Green Beret anymore? Whew. That was tough. If you know my story, if you've heard it when I've shared it, that's was something that I didn't want to give up. I didn't want to stop living that life. I didn't want to stop. You don't always get a choice. I was dealing with a lot of health issues. I was dealing with something that nearly ended my life. Like a mental state that nearly drove me to doing something that was really stupid. Now, I'm thankful and grateful that I was vulnerable enough to finally, in one moment of vulnerability, ask for help. And that led me to a great inpatient treatment facility. And it saved my life. And when I got better, I realized that being a Green Beret is not something that I will ever lose. I went through that selection. I went through that career. That was me. I did all those things. Just because I'm not doing it anymore doesn't mean that it doesn't erase all the things that I did. And at some point, we all have to walk away from the regiment. And I had to divorce that identity. I had to understand that there's more to me than that tab. And there's more to me than that beret. There's the greatest instructors always said the same thing. You earn the beret every single day. And I still think that every day that I am helping others, championing mental health and advocacy, I'm still of service to the community, still of service to others like me. So I'm still earning it. And it was an understanding that the beret never made me. It never amplified any of the skills that were inherently me. It was just an awesome hat that I got to wear. The green beret is the person. And I'm still that person, and arguably a better person. Because ultimately I understood that the greatest thing that I could do for myself was to walk away and finally learn who I was. Because for over 30 some odd years, I had no clue who the hell I really was. And I learned and developed my identity while I was finally getting help. So to answer your question, it took a lot of guts and healing to understand that I'm more than a fancy piece of headgear. And the man that made it through selection and those combat rotations and through all the training evolutions and through all that is still here. He just now has an awesome head of hair, a great beard, and a podcast. All right. On to our final question for the evening. My husband's going inpatient, and I believe he has all the signs and symptoms of operator syndrome. So he's been good to us, but he's suffering. How can we, as a family, support him and help him on his journey? Well, he is blessed to have a family that cares enough to listen to the ramblings of our podcast. So thank you for submitting this question and for valuing the input. The first thing I would say is let him know that the team that matters is the team at home. Make sure you let him know every single day that your home detachment is there for him and they've got his back. Transition as a family. Now, I'm only guessing that maybe you're close to transition time or close to retirement. Take the transition as a family. Understand what you have to do for the budget because, hey, 9 times out of 10, the spouse is in charge of budgeting and funds allocation. So make sure that you're planning and you're preparing for this transition together. And all of you have to be in this. Be patient. When you go in, patience not about going there for a few weeks. It's about going there for maybe a month or two and then doing outpatient treatment and then staying plugged in to your providers, going to a therapist, putting the tools to work. It takes a lot. Be there as a quiet coach. And if you need help too, be willing to advocate for yourself. Our spouses do a lot and they don't always get the same resources. But there are organizations that can help the entire family. So also know that you're a factor in this too. Be willing and be open to couples counseling. Be willing and be open to for treatments that are focused on you as a caregiver. And develop a family care plan of action. I mean this as, what are you guys going to do to blow off stress together? What are you guys going to do to get back together, to enjoy a vacation away? Because that stuff matters too. Family dinners, all those little traditions that we didn't get a chance to establish while we were always gone, traveling from trip to trip. Start putting that into effect as soon as you can. And then remember, diagnosis, not an identity. It's always comforting to get that diagnosis. You have TBI, you have PTSD, you have anxiety, you have depression. But be there to let him know that he's not broken and that he's not someone that is going to be dealing with this on their own. He will bounce back. Resilience is important, and he knows it more than anybody else. He's had to bounce back before. As a Green Beret, he knows resilience. He just needs to be reminded that it applies to mental health as well. And finally, remember to live together. Experience life. Do things as a couple. Get out when you can. If you have kids, be able to get a babysitter. And this applies to all of us, really. If you're married and still serving, prioritize your spouse. Make time for them. They go through hell, just like we do on our deployments. So make time for them, especially when you're going through the healing process. You got to feel like you're normal. You got to feel like you're able to take a step back away from constantly having to do work. But yeah, don't forget to live. That's it for tonight. That's it for this episode of Denny Answers Your Questions. But keep them coming. And, if I only get 2 next week, I'll wait till we get more. But I like to do this more regularly. So please keep the messages coming. Keep the questions coming. And who knows? If I get something that's way out of left field and I don't have the answers to it, I'll try to bring back another guest that might have answers to it. And we'll answer your questions together. As always, please, please, please continue to take care of each other. Remember, we didn't make it through our deployments by ourselves. We get through this together. So until next time, take care.